Welcome to Inspirational Leadership. I'm your host, Kristen Harcourt, and we have another fantastic guest in the house. Today, I'm speaking with Joey Walters, who's an accomplished strategic business executive for more than 25 years of experience in human resources across the United States and Canada. His expertise ranges from organizational leadership agility, talent acquisition, performance management, talent development, succession planning, employee engagement, health benefits, compensation, and mergers and acquisitions. He's currently the VP of HR at Schneider Electric. Joey believes the true value of HR is creating and executing a people strategy that aligns with the business, focused on engaging team members to perform at the highest level to deliver business success and growth. Together with a team of great HR professionals, Joey's vision is set on being a top employer in the industry by offering a great team member experiencing, by leveraging digital technology, best-in-class programs and services that result in high levels of development, flexibility, well-being, inclusion, and engagement for employees. Welcome to the show, Joey.
Thank you so much for having me today.
I'm really excited to hear about your journey because I know a lot of you, I'm sure you've learned in 25 years in the profession. But as a starting point, I would love to learn, Joey, what made you even get into HR? Tell me a little bit more about your journey and what got you here.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting question. So I hadn't always planned to get into HR. I started studying business, and I was majoring in finance until I took my
Yeah.
first HR course, and I was like, wow, like I really love helping people. I really love developing people, and I was like, I really want to get into HR and really shape the future of HR and take my motivation and my passion for business and sales and marketing and my passion for developing people and then mesh that together. And so that's what got me into the profession. And I've been in there ever since for the last 25 years and loving it.
Amazing, amazing. So probably not something that you were noticing when you were 18 years old in high school, like I'm going to be an HR professional. Like I don't find in general that it kind of zigs and zags.
No, 100%. I think, growing up, I played competitive sports, never thought that I would, have a profession in HR. Like I said, I was really focused on business and finance. But,
Yeah.
I guess my upbringing and playing competitive sports, being involved with teams and so forth really drove my passion around helping and developing people. And, I get to live it every single day and still, dive into the business and understand what customer needs are, understand challenges and opportunities, and really, mesh that all in together to really, love my passion of really helping people and then focusing on the business side as well.
Yeah, I think you have really that important combination that I like to see in HR, which is a really strong foundation when it comes to understanding the business and the finance and how an organization works, because ultimately it is to succeed and hit those business outcomes. And yet we also don't get to hit those business outcomes and make that kind of profit if we don't have the right humans that are working within an environment where they can thrive. And I sometimes see over indexing on one side or over indexing on the other side, right? Like so focused on business and they forget, oh, the humans, they need things to be able to deliver these results. Or sometimes over indexing the other way. We just want to create an environment where, the humans just feel good. And it's like, well, they also need to be challenged and there also needs to be accountability and all of that kind of stuff. So it sounds like you bring that really good integrated combo.
Yes, for me, I think that's really been successful in my career and being successful in the organizations that I worked is to really, mesh the business with the people side. And I often say that, in HR, they're not people programs, they're business programs that help attract, develop, retain, and, accelerate our talent to really create value for our customers. And so, ensuring that we're putting in programs in place that are going to help create value, create impact both internally and externally is so key. And then making sure that we measure that, right? Just not putting in a program that says, okay, this is what we need to do, making sure that we measure it to make sure that it's actually doing what we're supposed to be doing, and then going back to business results and integrating both, to me, is the key to success as we continue to evolve. So to your point, humans, our culture is the most important thing. I often say, our competitors can take our technology, can take our products, but they can't take our culture. And so how we make decisions, how we support one another, how we live our impact values at Schneider, to me, is what separates us apart, because our great people is what makes our great culture.
So I love to dig in a little bit more with what you just said there, because I think some people have the right intention. They understand that they're trying to create a culture like you're describing, and yet there isn't enough, perhaps, support, emphasis, reinforcement of what that looks like to have that kind of culture. And I talk a lot about how there's many organizations that have beautiful values around who they are and what they stand for. And yet, if you were to ask someone it's like to work in that culture, they're like, yeah, that's just what we're saying we are all about, but I don't actually experience that and feel like that as an employee. So I'm curious for you, like, what does that look like to actually, create the vision and get really clear around what you're trying to do there, but then make sure it's getting reinforced and supported. And when there are things that are happening that are not in alignment with that culture, because I think that's a really important piece, are happening.
Yeah, I think when creating a vision, you have to bring your employees and your customers part of the solution to really understand what type of culture you're really trying to build. And you have to bring people along in the culture. It's how you operate and act every day. It's how you hire. It's how you handle challenging situations. It's how you promote. It's how we do things around here. And so for us, here, it's really living our impact values, and they're integrated in everything that we do every single day. And to me, the true testament of your culture is how people act when nobody is around, including ourselves. And so for us, it's really living our impact values, and impact stands for inclusion. So how do we value different perspectives and views to come together, to collaborate, and trust one another? We have a saying here at Schneider: be hard on the problem, kind to the people. So we can value different perspectives, but that's how we bring value in to our customer. It's mastery. It's having that infinite mindset. How are we getting 1% better every single day? How are we getting better than we were yesterday, but sticking true to how we operate here? It's purpose. It's setting ambitious goals. It's action. It's holding ourselves, but everyone accountable towards that one team ambitious goal. It's curiosity. It's from a C perspective, it's being bolder, better, faster. It's failing forward. So like, we're trying new things, trying to be bolder. And if we fail, let's fail forward so we can brace for impact and be agile and move. And then last, as a team, we operate with one team mindset. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how big our organization, the customer just sees Schneider.
Yeah.
And so how do we celebrate each other when we're really working really well and winning? And at the same time, how do we pick ourselves up in times of need? And especially when you're going through difficult situations, how do we band together to really support one another? That's the culture that we have built here. But it's every single day. Like, it's how you act, it's how you operate, it's how you bring people into the organization. It's even how you exit people. How do you take care of people when you're making tough, difficult decisions? And so when we say being kind, doesn't mean that we don't make difficult decisions, but we make this decisions with integrity and grace, and we take care of our people.
Yeah, I think that's such a great distinction, because sometimes people misinterpret empathy around and that kindness, that you're still not making difficult decisions, but that's not the case at all. There's going to be times where, but it's the care that goes into how you're having the dialogue, how you're communicating with that person. And I love the concept of infinite mindset. I think that's going to be some new languaging I'm going to use, Joey. Where does that come from? Is that something that was created internally there? Is that something that you've experienced on your journey?
It comes from a book by Simon Sinek, and for
Yes.
me, it's business and life is infinite, right? It's ever changing. You don't know what the players are all the times. You don't know what the rules are. They're ever changing, but it's how you're getting better on where you need to go based on your vision and your destination than you were yesterday, right? And it's not necessarily about being the best, but it's better than you were yesterday. And so
Yeah.
when you're focused on that, that really helps. And then when you tie that into, you talk about care and inclusion, like we have a really inclusion and care culture where we're valuing different perspectives. We value different, understandings of people in where they're coming from. And we're so diverse that really brings our company to the next level, because that's how you synergize together. That's how you create value, by getting better. And like I said before, having your employees and your customer part of the solution, having your people part of the solution is what really separates us.
Yeah. And I also like with when you said the 1% better every day. I love that. I had that as something that I have a quote in my office actually, to remember. It also puts it in perspective because sometimes we're thinking of those big things, but actually it's those micro moments and how we're continuing to prove every day and make that progress, is where we really evolve. So I like the way that you talk about it in that way. So when you start to think about HR as a profession, I'm sure you would say things that HR is very strong at when we think of people and culture, and then ways that you might like to see it evolve more. So what does that look like for you when you think about that vision for HR?
Yeah, I think, HR is very, very strong in the grassroots HR, performance management, talent acquisition, conflict resolution, benefit programs, and so forth. I think where we need to continue to evolve is really understanding the business. What are the challenges of the business? How does the business make money? What are our customers saying? What are the opportunities in the business? And then building programs around that to help accelerate, attract, retain, and develop talent, but create value and impact to customers. The bigger problem that you solve, the more value you get, then you can make more money and then reinvest back into processes, into people. Outside of that is, making data-driven decisions. Yes, you have to understand your innate ability and your emotion, but at the same time, we have to measure it. So, ensuring that when we're putting in programs, that we're measuring what does success look like? Why are we doing this? Making sure that when we're putting these programs, what is in it for our people, that's very, very clear.
Yeah.
Ensuring that we're communicating clearly and we're asking the right questions with empathy.
Yeah.
And, uh, like I said before, data driven decisions. And then, I would say, I guess, as we're continuing to evolve, looking at AI as a technology tool on how we can enhance communication and human connection as we continue to go. People still need this human connection, and that's how we come and collaborate together. And that's really what, our impact values are, is how we come together to really bring a solution and impact.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with what you've shared there.
Mhm.
If we drill down and go a little bit more into the leadership side, because I'm a
Mhm.
firm believer that ultimately we could talk about all these visions, but every day we have leaders who are part of being able to create an environment where people can show up as their best selves and help guide and coach. So I'm curious from your perspective. First of all, when you think about inspirational
Mhm.
leadership, and inspirational leaders, what are some of those behaviors that you like to see in leaders who are really thriving?
Yeah. First, I think, again, you have to create that vision, right? You have to know where you're going, and it has to be really clear. If it's not clear, you can't accelerate with speed. I often say, like, if you take a plane, if it's a couple degrees off, it doesn't get to its destination. So setting that direction. And then next is, making sure that you communicate with empathy and active listening, and having your staff involved in the action items that align with that vision.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's developing, that next generation. To me, you are not a leader until you create great leaders around you, right? And so ensuring that you have that trust and that integrity and that care and that empathy. But it's communicating, it's asking questions, it's asking a lot of questions, open-ended questions, like, how are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10? How would you handle this, the situation in my shoes, as well as, being vulnerable, sharing a little bit about yourself. I think often sometimes there's a bias around leaders that we have it all together, that we know all the answers, and knowing that you don't have the answers and that you're depending on your team, and is so critical. And so, from there, then having an infinite mindset. How am I being a better leader every single day? How am I learning from the people around me and from other great leaders? I think that's inspirational leadership. But it comes down to communication. You have to communicate you have to ensure that people understand exactly what you're talking about so they can interpret it the way you're trying to pass on the message. And at the same time, active listening and asking questions and ensuring that you're getting all the information. One of the things that I did when I joined this organization is ask a lot of questions and have a lot of people around me to help support me, because our business is so big and diverse that the one way to accelerate my growth was to have these great connections inside the organization. And how am I partnering together? And that's, I think, what separates leaders from being inspirational or non-inspirational.
Yeah, I think the question part is so important. It's reminding me I was at Work Human 3 weeks ago, and Trevor Noah was there, and he is for Microsoft a role I think they've called like Chief Question Officer. And he says like, but quite seriously, like he does get involved with a lot of the AI and where it's evolving. But he said one of the things I'm really good is asking really good questions, and I'm not embarrassed, and I don't care what anybody thinks if they think that's a stupid question I'm asking. And he says a lot of times he sees in cultures is where there could be a little bit too performative and they're not asking the questions and they're not getting at the answers. So I really like what you said there around questions, because I think it goes both ways. Those leaders asking lots of questions, but also creating a very open environment with a lot of psychological safety and trust. So when someone's not understanding the communication properly, they feel comfortable saying, I think you're saying this, but I'm not sure. Are we going here? Are we going there? And they feel comfortable to be having those open dialogue and asking more questions.
Yeah. I think, you hit a good point. Psychological safety and intellectual honesty. It's like really leading with love, right? If you're going to lead yourself, you got to lead with your head. When you lead others, you got to lead with your heart, right? And so part of that could be tough love and being kind, right? And so it's not always about positivity. It could be about developmental and being open and honest, but it's how you deliver that message and with empathy. And so that's what's so critical, from a leadership perspective, when you're having those tough conversations around performance or a specific situation. It's really being open and honest, and having that empathy on how you deliver that message. And that's what separates having a difficult conversation that doesn't go well to having a difficult conversation that does go well. Is how you frame it.
Yes, yes, huge, huge, right? And I think the vulnerability piece, I definitely see this with many of the leaders that I work with, especially at the CEO level. And again, vulnerability sometimes gets misinterpreted. Vulnerability is not like, oh, I'm dealing with all of these things behind the scenes and I'm going to let you know about all of that. No, but the vulnerability might be sharing part of yourself or something that's going on even in your personal life or where you might have struggled. And it does so much to create connection and trust and authenticity. And to your point, that we're all valuable, right? Like we all have times that our humanity shows up and we make mistakes and we don't do anything perfectly. And perfection's never the goal, right? Because we're all evolving and we're going to continue to have ways that we can grow and learn as a leader. And so I'm curious for you, Joey. This is an opportunity for you also get to be vulnerable on the
Yeah.
podcast when you think about, and this might not be something now, this could be over your 25 years and something you've grown in this area, but
Mhm.
where are some of the areas that you noticed that you struggled as a leader where you wanted to really grow and develop, either through you having the self-awareness or perhaps even getting feedback from others?
Yeah, so I would say it's two things. One, I'm a very authentic leader and I'm a very passionate person. So how do I take that passion, and when I'm feeling something, feel it in the moment, but learn how to. I've had to learn how to, respond instead of react in certain
Right.
situations, right? So that would be one, and then know that my passion and my authenticity and my energy is my strength, but
Yes.
also know that it could be, a developmental area. So being very cautious and cognizant of that
Yeah.
is one. The second thing is asking those active questions, like over a period of time. Communication is not what I'm just saying; it's what I'm doing to ask to get that feedback from other people. How do I ask that? How do I frame it? Those are things that that I really needed about. And then I would say the last thing. Um, would be my wellness. Early on in my career, I pushed myself very, very hard. My wellness and my well-being and my health suffered because of that, and now I put that first. So
Mm.
it's putting my morning routine that doesn't need, it's not like an hour long, but my morning and my night routine is my
Yeah.
consistency to my health. I think health is a game changer
Yeah.
in every aspect of your life, and in putting that, you can, I always say, you can have the best job, you can have the most money, you can have all these things, but if you don't have health, you don't have anything. And so putting that first and foremost is the most important thing and is the game changer. So those would be the three.
Thank you for sharing that. I talk a lot about your health is your wealth. And sometimes it takes something very drastic to happen for someone to recognize that. And it's much better to be able to catch it before it gets to that place. And self-leadership is so much of that, right? Because if you're taking really good care of yourself in your mornings and your evenings and doing that consistently, you will always show up as a different leader.
100%.
You will
100%.
always. And I also appreciate what you said because I think we need to just name that too. Something that can be a superpower, you can also over-index it in certain situations, right? So recognizing, okay, this passion right now in this moment might be being perceived as being a little bit reactive, or this energy is feeling a little bit overwhelming for the people around me. How can I be conscious of knowing my audience, knowing the situation? So that I can be really harnessing it and leveraging it in a way that's going to be most effective. And it's really interesting because I think part of that also comes from you could have a whole team. And what one person loves, the other person is like, oh, that's too much. And constantly asking them, hey, what's going well, really well for you? What would you like me to be doing less of and more of? And then the one person's like, keep it up, Joey. I love what you do with this person. Someone else is like, could you just do a little bit less of that? Because you're constantly adapting for those different people on your team.
Yeah, 100%. You hit something that's very, very critical. So, really understanding the emotional intelligence of your team, who you can push, who you can't in certain scenarios, how you communicate positive feedback, how do you communicate developmental feedback, how do you react in certain situations, but also understanding that you are human and that this is you, and so that's part of the vulnerability. And I think, one thing that I try to constantly remind people when I'm talking, I get like, you're a VP, you're really busy, but I'm human, and it's okay to reach out to me, and it's okay for me to maybe feel tired today, and it's okay for me because I'm going through a difficult situation, or maybe I didn't handle that situation properly, and then I come back, to the team and say, hey, listen, I thought about this. I could have handled this a little bit better. Just being open and honest and vulnerable is so critical. I think, the bias is that leadership has it all together, but we're human, and so it's how do we, push ourselves outside our comfort zone? How do we learn, from that as we get forward, and get 1% better every single day? And the only way you're going to do that is to, try new things. If you want to do something you've never done, you got to do things you've never done, right? And so you have to push yourself, and also what got you here won't get you there. What's successful in one organization in one role, it won't is not necessarily successful. So you have to adapt and be agile around that.
Yeah, and I think what's really important with what you just said there around the communication, because if anything is guaranteed, we will fall and make mistakes. That's just is going to happen. It's a guarantee. But how do you go about and doing the repair? And that can feel very vulnerable, what you just shared there, and how powerful it is. Because now all of a sudden, not only are you modeling like, oh yeah, Joey's human just like me, and I'm going to make mistakes. And now maybe I might go into another meeting where I didn't show up as my best self. And based what I just saw Joey do there, I might do the same thing. And the next day and say, you know what? I realized I maybe came off the wrong way. And if I'm talking vulnerability, I think that one's a massive one where people avoid doing the repair because for multiple reasons, it feels super uncomfortable.
Yeah, because I guess we're admitting that we weren't our best and we failed, but the only way you learn is through fail and trying, right? And you have to give yourself grace and forgiveness, and this, pick yourself back up, and it takes courage to be vulnerable, right? And You have to be comfortable in yourself, and I think when you do those things, people feel that you're authentic, they feel that you're down to earth, and people want to work with you more because you've put that out there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm sure you've been involved in so many different implementations over the years. So this could be something at Schneider Electric, it could be over the years, but some of those things, like when you think about you really implementing systems that you got to see a massive ROI and you're really proud of it. I'm curious around what stands out in your mind in some of those initiatives.
I have two actually, and that's a great question. The first was when I was at Carrier during COVID. We get into COVID.
Yeah,
Everybody's looking to HR. How do we handle this? And one of the things that we implemented is we created a vision, and the vision was, how do we keep everyone inside our organization safe and employed, and how do we do that for our customers?
yeah,
And so we framed every decision we made around COVID on going back to that principle. How do we keep everybody safe and employed from our customer and family perspective, as well as our employees and their families? And that really helped make really difficult decisions a little bit easier because we knew what direction we wanted to go. And, we were able to keep everybody employed where some of our competitors laid people off. We were able to accelerate growth after that. So I talked about before, making sure that you're making decisions in the short term that can help you out in the long and don't jeopardize the long term. We
yeah,
we we were able to hit the gates and run once it shifted the demand, because we had everybody employed and everybody was like so thankful that they continuously were employed and that they weren't laid off, and that we were able to go and really drive business. So
yeah,
that's one.
yeah.
The second is being here, at Schneider, and implementing our new impact values and how that related to our new performance management. And it was really, it's not only about me. It's about what am I doing to contribute to other people's success. And we
Mm,
implemented that last year. And to me, that was very unique in the business, because mostly performance management is like, what am I doing or what my team's doing? But this was our performance management framework is also, how do you live our impact values every single day, and what am I doing to contribute to other people's success,
mm,
so that way they're getting 1% better, that we have one team with one goal in mind to get that ambitious growth, and we're supporting that to our customer, and we're collaborating together as one Schneider out to the customer. And it doesn't matter how big our organization is and what BUs, we're focusing on that one team mindset.
I love the way you're reinforcing with that. And you're actually saying we care about this. It matters. And this is how we're showing that we matter because we're actually tracking it from performance. Anybody listening right now, pay attention, right? Like, don't just say this is something that you believe is important. What are you doing to track it to reinforce that? So people are like, oh, you actually mean this. I'm going to engage in those behaviors. So, so, so important.
Yes. I mean, and that's culture, right? How do you act
Yeah.
every single day? Like, you
Yeah.
have to do what you say. And, we know as we get older, uh, people don't just measure you based on what you say, they measure you on what you do. And so that's the same thing with companies, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And to use a COVID example, I think it's such a great example of continuing to keep that North Star front and center, right? Like this is what matters. So when we have these difficult decisions, we're going to pull this back. How does this relate and connect to that? Simple yet not simple, right? Because I think often that gets forgotten and really keep that intention um, front and center. Amazing. When you think about some of the leaders who have really had an impact on your journey,
yes.
who jumps out at you? Because I think to go back to the one team and success through others and less individualistic and really remembering that we do this together. I think when we think about, if we go back, as we continue down our career journey, we look back and we say, you know what, there were some people on our journey that got us to where we are today. Sometimes it might just be them believing in us or seeing something in us that we didn't see in ourselves. And I think it's really important for both reasons. I think someone listening to the podcast, you might not realize the impact you could be having in terms of mentoring others. And then people who are listening who might be earlier in your career, there's a lot of people who'd be happy to mentor you, like just even going and asking. It's such a gift to be able to give back. So I'm curious who jumps out for you, Joey, on your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I have several, but if one really jumps out for me was my leader when I was at Amoresco.
Yeah,
He took a bold bet on me early on in my career to be an HR manager.
yeah,
And he really helped develop me, and he believed
yeah,
in me, and he
yeah,
really helped me, not only understand business, but also understand leadership. and just like active listening, setting goals. How do you measure people's performance? How do you communicate? And then on the flip side, he got me involved in a lot of merger and acquisitions and business side of that, and we would talk about business, and I was able to really learn. But to your point, we really don't know how much we can affect other people in their development, in the feedback that we give them. And so being very cognizant of that, how you give feedback, how do you receive feedback, is so important. But I've had such great leaders along the way that really, get me involved in projects, give me some great feedback, advice, including here. One of the reasons why I came to work here
Yeah.
at Schneider is we have such great leadership, and really, surrounding yourself with great people, like the
Mhm.
environment piece, like who you surround yourself with, and it's really develop you to the next level. And I think I've grown so much in the 14 months that I've been here, that has really helped me be a better leader, a better
Mhm.
partner, better father, and a better person. So.
Mm. So important. I heard a stat around that recently that if you're around, like the comparison around being around A players and B players, and if you're around other A players, that makes you like put in another 20% in terms of your performance. But if you're around B players, it can actually take you down 30%. I was like, wow, the impact when you're around the ones who are really up leveling you and then seeing what's possible. But then what can also, when you're around the ones who are not necessarily not the ones who are like far on the other side, but they're just kind of like coasting and not necessarily bringing their all, how that can also bring you down. So that's such a great example you've given around being around really great leaders.
Yeah, 100%. And, for me, we might have an infinite mindset, but we don't have an infinite time, right? So
Yes.
there's a quote out there: if you want to know the road ahead, ask the people coming back. So surround yourself with people that have already done it, that are already at a different level. And that's the only way that you can accelerate and really learn at a quick pace.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. When you start to think about, the current environment, geopolitical and climate, there's just a lot going on in the world right now. We know with AI and that there's lots of moving very quickly, but then having to pivot because you might think it's this and then 2 weeks later it's something else. And just
Mhm.
lots of it can be a more chaotic environment and sometimes turmoil. And what would be your advice for people leaders managing and leading in that kind of environment?
So one, be really clear on what your vision is. And if it's not the right vision, be agile to make the adjustment. Two, communication, questions.
Yeah,
Make sure your people and your customers are part of the solution. It's
yeah,
so critical.
yes.
Um, Also know that in this time, great leaders create great leaders. Control
Hmm.
the controllables,
Yeah,
control how you act, control the decisions you make, and also know the true testament of your leadership is the decisions and the actions you take when you're facing uncertainty
yeah,
and ambiguity.
yes.
And so that's what people measure you on. Like when everything is going really well,
Hmm.
you know, you can make decisions that people will let slide, but how you make decisions during uncertainty and ambiguity is, true testament of your leadership, right? Because you have to walk into the unknown and get a result, and you have to have that infinite mindset. So control the controllables, make sure that your people and your customers are part of the solution, be really clear on where you're going, be agile to make adjustments,
Yeah,
and again, control the controllables. That's what you can do. And also know that don't jeopardize the short term for the long term, and know that this too shall pass. We all know, like, each time passes, right? So as I go back to that COVID example, how do you get through this current situation to accelerate your growth? Because we know once we get out of this situation, it's going to accelerate growth, because that's the way life works.
yeah.
It's up and down.
Ebbs and flows. It's the human experience.
Yes.
Reminding yourself of that is sometimes important. Like it's not going to be like this forever. We're in a sprint, might be a very exhausting sprint, but there's going to be recovery, hopefully sooner than later. Um, when you think about your continuing to learn and develop personal development, have there been some books that have stood out for you? These don't have to be recent books. They could be you read them 15 years ago and they're still classics, but
Yeah.
some books that stand out for you?
Yeah, there's tons of books that many that I have read, but one that I have read about 7 8 times
Yeah,
is Turning Pro by Stephen Pressfield, and it's
nice.
really about how do you shift from an amateur mindset to a professional mindset, and what does that mean? It's a very easy read, but
Yeah.
it's so critical, and it really comes down to making that commitment. But what are the great habits that you have? And what's the self discipline and the consistency and the persistency towards that gets you to the finish line every single day? And basically, the professional mindset is life's work. Like, you're going to get into a sabotage pattern. You're going to get into procrastination. So what do you do to snap yourself out of that and be cautious to act like that professional to really, be and reach your full potential?
I love that book and I haven't read it for a while, so you've motivated me to go back and reread it. Sometimes when you haven't read it for a while, there's just something you need to hear again.
Yeah, and I think those critical books that really have done a lot for my development. I
Yeah.
try to go back and reread them again because it puts you back into that frame of mind, or gives you that perspective, or you learn something new that you didn't learn from before, right? And so I think we're always looking to try to get new books, but that can also cause confusion. So, like, going back to those principles will make you successful, and reread those books. I think is critical. One thing that I try to do on a yearly basis.
I actually at one point gave myself a book ban that I wasn't allowed to read anything else. And I had to go back to the other one to say, have I applied everything in that book that I read before? I don't think so, because I think when I did that recently with Atomic Habits and went back to it because there's so much rich information in it. And I think you could read a book 4 times. The first time, just taking it all in. The second time, doing a lot of highlight. The third time, okay, what are those concepts I'm going to start to put into action? Because it's not like you can put all of them. It takes time. I think it's a really important reminder you're giving there because sometimes it's not about reading another new shiny object.
Yeah.
It's like applying what you learned in the last ones.
Yes. Yes. And I like that book band, so I'm gonna take that in and implement that with myself.
I always like to give my guests an opportunity to leave a final thought, whatever is feeling most front and center for you that you'd love to leave with the audience.
Yeah, I would say, be your authentic self. Know what you really want to do in your life. Even if it's non-conforming, follow your heart, follow your passion, stay consistent, discipline, and the habits towards that. I think that's what really will set you on the right path as you move forward in your life.
Amazing. And where can people learn more about you, connect with you and Schneider Electric? Where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, best place, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on there, and you can follow along. And
Yeah.
I'm posting from time to time.
Yeah.
So
Yes, absolutely. Great place. And I'll have that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today, Joey.
thank you so much for having me, Kristen. This has been such a great chat, and such a pleasure to be on this podcast.
And I know it's going to be a lot of really good stuff for everyone listening. And for everyone listening, if this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Come connect with me as well and Joey on LinkedIn. If you're curious about how we can work together, you can learn more at KristenHarcourt.com. Wherever you are in the world, I'm saying good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Keep leading with heart, stay human, and take a moment today to reflect on the kind of leader you want to be. We're sending tons of love. Bye bye.